All right, so we're going to get started. Today, our special guest is Cynthia Sittig, Miss G.I. Jane herself. She is the ultimate underwriter. She knows everything, so I'm so happy you're on this podcast. And we got it recorded as well. So go ahead, Cindy.
Hey guys, so I just wanted to do a call this week in regards to, so we have the holiday coming up, right? And I'm gonna take off my dog tag so they're gonna play the whole time. So I want to do a call about one, making our calls, running our appointments, and the weather and the holidays, right? So all those things kind of come together. And for a lot of us, they can give us a lot of excuses, right? Some people, they really motivate us, other ones, not so much. So I wanted to tell you guys a little story that I find quite comical, but at the same point, I want you to think, if this was me, would I do that? And I'll be honest, if I could get people to even do 25% of what it took to make those couple days happen, okay, I would do anything for that. All right. So here's the story. So I lived in Pittsburgh and I was working out of West Virginia and down in Charleston, West Virginia, if anybody knows where that is. So I get up in the morning, I leave my house and I start driving down the road and I notice that my car, it's like really cold. It's wintertime and I notice that it's really, really cold. So I'm like driving and I'm like, well, the car will heat up, the car will heat up. Well, come to find out, guess what? My heat broke and I was still over 5 hours away from where my destination was that I had to get to. Now, I had two choices. Most people would just turned around, gone back home, said, hey, you know what? My heat went out. I can't work, right? No, I was insane. I found my closest Walmart, went inside. And if you guys have ever been hunting, they've got little packets that you can buy, crush them, shake them up, right? And you put them in your pockets to keep your hands and feet warm. So I bought a whole bunch of those. And I had them inside my gloves. I had them inside my shoes. I had them inside my clothes because it was negative 17 degrees outside. Okay. Now I'm driving. I have no heat. I have no way to get anything off my windshield. Like I'm just at the mercy that this is all going to work out. Right. So I drive and I get down there. I spend my first day setting my appointments. So I set all my appointments. And I don't think that people really thought that I was going to show up. Okay. Now, when I say it got bad in West Virginia, I mean, they were shutting down the interstate. Okay. And when you're traveling around certain parts of West Virginia, you have to be able to get on the interstate to go places. Right. So I get on the interstate and I get off the interstate. I go run an appointment. Right. And let me tell you, you are highly motivated to get into a house when you have no heat in your car and it's negative 17 degrees outside. Okay. So I go to the next time I had to go get back on the interstate to get to the next town. When I go to get on there, there's a police officer there. And he's like, ma'am, you can't go on the interstate, yada, yada, yada. You know, it's just, we're trying to keep everybody off there. I said, listen, I'm from out of town. And of course I have Pennsylvania plates on, right? Now my sister did live there. So they're kind of white lies I was telling, but I knew I had to get to my appointments and sitting at home was not going to get anything taken care of. So I was like, listen, my sister lives in the town right over and I've got to get to her. So I've got to get there so I can be safe. And he's like, okay. So he let me on the interstate and I went and had another appointment. So then my next appointment happened to be the opposite direction. And then when I went to go get on, there was a guy there. And so I told him the same thing. I said, listen, my sister lives right over here and I've got to be able to get to her house because I'm from out of state. I don't have any other way to get there. So he let me go and I went and ran another appointment. So then after that, I had to get on the interstate again to go and run an appointment. And we had an office in Hurricane. So I just told them, hey, listen, I'm from out of town. You know, I'm coming down the interstate. I'm just trying to get off this exit to go to my office in Hurricane. So they let me go. People were amazed. Okay. And when I say I was running behind, guys, I was running behind. I mean, sometimes I'd get to a house and I'd be 2 hours behind, but guess what? When it's 17 degrees outside, negative 17, nobody's going anywhere. Okay. So they were all home. They were trapped. They didn't have any way to leave, but they were so surprised and thankful that I showed up at their house. And I ended up writing $8,000. Now, on this side of the world, $8,000 isn't like mind blowing. Okay. But where I came from and the amount of premium that you write per sale, that's a lot. Okay. When you're talking an average, like $50 premium. Okay. That's a whole lot of business that I had to write and hustle for. So, needless to say, I was pretty cold, but I was determined that I was going to use this to my advantage. Okay. My advantage was that people couldn't go anywhere. Okay. They had to stay at home. Their schools were closed, workplaces were closed, the highways were closed, like everything was closed. So my idea was I got to do everything I can before they finally shut off the highway and I can't get back home. Okay. So I run all these appointments, and then just as they say they're about to shut down the highway, I'm already on it. And I'm like, ain't nothing stopping me because I'm getting back up to Pittsburgh. So I just kept driving and got myself back to Pittsburgh. Well, it was really funny because we used to have like every week we'd have a meeting and they'd recognize people, right? So I wrote over $8,000 in just a couple of days, which in its own feat back then was a lot. But it was funny because they then called out the entire hurricane office. So there's like 16 people who work out of that office. Who thinks that that whole entire office wrote more business than I did? I outwrote the entire office. One little person, all because I refused to quit, right? And it was funny because they were asked like this and they said, oh my goodness, we had this terrible storm. The highways were closed. It was -8 degrees, all of these things, right? And so then they said, well, can we ask you this question? How did Sittig come down there and work and write $8,000 in 3 days? And they were like, wait, what? Sittig was down here? And they were like, yeah, she had no heat in her car. Like, so again, it's just the mindset, right? It's just how people perceive things. I perceive things. I write the most business the fourth quarter, I believe, for 2 reasons. One, it gets dark real quick. People don't want to go out, right? And it's freaking cold up north. And people don't want to go out in that weather when they just took them forever to get back home. And secondly, it's the holidays. And let's be honest, people think about their families more during that time. And like, what if I wasn't here? And they think of that because they think about, their Uncle Billy who's not there, or, their cousin who's not there anymore, their niece who isn't there, right? And they're missing them. And so they can realistically put themselves in that picture of them being out of there. So with that being said, this week you're going to get a lot of excuses from people why they can't sit down with you. They're getting ready for Thanksgiving. Okay. But we all are. Okay. I mean, I work a gazillion hour days and I still find ways to buy a turkey and do things for my family and get things taken care of. Right. So you have to ask yourself, are you the person that's going to buy their excuses? Or are you going to be like, I certainly understand that. Let me tell you this, my job is to be in and be out and get everything taken care of. You just have to be able to push through all that and don't fall into the excuses. Don't buy their excuses. And, sometimes it's hard for my family too, right? Because they want me here. My girls are off school, sometimes my son is home from the service, and everybody wants me to be here. But that's not what my job is. My job is to help and serve and protect other people. And I can't do that sitting from home. Okay. So what I would say is that, when it's cold, bring that. Like I see right now that like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday up north, it's supposed to be really bad. And like, I'm super excited because I know nobody wants to go out in that. So I know that Sittig is going to write a crap ton of business because people are going to be there for me to see and talk to. Okay. If you have trouble booking people on the phone, show up at their doors, because again, if there's a storm outside, typically they're not going anywhere and they're going to be there and they don't have excuse that they're going to run out the door. So when you get there, most of them you'll find are actually very appreciative. They're very surprised that you're actually out in this weather or you're out this close to a holiday, because of the fact that, they don't see themselves as doing it. But just because they don't doesn't mean that you shouldn't. Okay. So just make sure that you don't get caught up in that and keep in mind when the holidays fall. Okay. Because when you write business is very pertinent to this, right? Because the insurance companies are going to be closed. So I also don't want you guys stuck in a position where you didn't work hard enough beforehand to get your deposits in beforehand and then get deposits that hit after the holiday as well, right? So a lot of people forget about that. And then all of a sudden, Thanksgiving's on Thursday, then you've got Friday that most insurance companies aren't open, then you've got Saturday, Sunday, and then when they get back Monday, they're just starting to think to work, right? So that could be 4 days, and 4 days that you're only with your family, but you're not getting deposits. So you need to make sure that right now is when we need to make that push so we can get those deposits, because Moo is taking a couple days, for them to do theirs. 24 to 48 hours. 48 hours is really what I've been seeing right now from Mutual of Omaha before they're approving my stuff. And of course, Americo, they approve it. And then, the next day you see down your commission statement. And then the following day, then you see the actual commissions deposited into your bank account. So just be mindful of those things, especially if you're new. I just don't want you blindsided or surprised or stressed. Nobody should be stressed over the holidays with this. You won't be, as long as you go and put the work in now. Okay. But if you don't, and you dilly dally and you listen to all the other rigmarole, then you will be stressed out when the holiday comes. And that's not how you want to spend it with your family. Okay. That's not the purpose of it. So I wanted to tell you guys that little story just because I think it perfectly depicts, challenges that people can be up against and what they, have to do or, not have to do. And then I want you to ask yourself, in that situation, you leave your house, you have 6 hours to drive, you have no heat in your car, do you turn around and go home? And then once you get down there and it's a straight up blizzard and it's negative 17 degrees and they're trying to tell you you can't go to your next appointment, do you find a way? Right? And then do you continue to run those appointments? Because if you think I was comfortable and you think I wasn't freezing and you think that at some points I wasn't thinking this is a really bad decision, of course I thought those things, right? But knowing that I was sitting and helping those families afterwards and just seeing how thankful they were, that I was there. Your hardest people to get in touch with when the weather is bad, go see those people, because chances are they're locked down in their houses just like everybody else, So with that said, I'll leave it open to any questions. If there's any questions that you guys have in regards to, it could be to anything, but specifically, making calls around this time of year, running appointments, hurdles you're finding yourself, or ways that you find that you're stopping yourself from pushing a little bit harder to get to really where you need to be.
Hey, Cindy, can you hear me?
Sir. I can hear you.
Okay, how you doing? I just had 2 questions. I wanted to know, typically, how long do you spend on the phone on dial days? Like, how many hours do you usually spend on the phone? And then what type of leads are you purchasing currently?
Okay, so I do a lot of mortgage protection, right? So I have multiple counties locked out up in Pittsburgh that I run appointments up there. Okay. And I think as far as, I guess my better question would be for you, Julian, is what leads are you buying? Like, what are you buying and how much are you calling?
Okay, so I just bought, yesterday, I purchased 140 leads. I got mostly instance, a few 1 months, and I got as many mortgage protection as I could in Indy. Primarily on the outskirts of Indy, though. I haven't been in the middle city. It's called Marion County. That's where Indianapolis downtown is. I haven't really been messing with out there just because Nick Ayla said that it's better to be on the outskirts of the city because you tend to not get as many no-shows and everything. So I've been trying that. But the past 2 times I've been dialing, I dialed 600 times. Last dial day, I spent 9 hours on the phone. I only got 9 appointments. And then today I've dialed around 270 times and I only have 4 appointments and 2 of them are sketchy. And I've just been getting hit with every objection imaginable, off the wall stuff. One of the guys said that he was a FFL agent, and I don't know. People just say a lot of weird stuff. Just put it that way. I'm not gonna get too much into detail, but it's frustrating.
Okay. Well, how about this, Julian? How about before I only worked in Pittsburgh and Virginia? Before then, when I lived in Pittsburgh 100% of the time, how about half my week was spent in Pittsburgh and half my week was spent in Marion County, because I had the leads in Indianapolis locked out and I used to travel there and spend half my week there every single week. Okay.
Okay.
And here's what I would say. I get some of the logic in it, right? But to me, people are people. Okay. There's people in big cities that write a crap ton of business. There's people out in the middle of nowhere that write a crap ton of business. Really, whether you're going to write a lot of business, Julian, is right here. Okay. It's in your head. It's in your mind. It's your perception. It's how you see it. Because however you see it, whatever your perception is, that's going to be your reality, irregardless. Okay. Because I guarantee I could put someone, you could be there and you could say, hey, Cindy, all these people in the city, they're no showing me, can't, I'm not writing anything, whatever it is. And then I could have a brand new person. And all I could say to them is, listen, this is a hot market. You'll go there and write a crap ton of business. And this is what's going to happen. And they're going to go there and guess what's going to happen? That's what's going to happen. What I told them, because that's the only thing they know. So that's their perception, right? When I would go out to Indy, I would write anywhere between $10,000 and $17,000. And I was only there for 3 to 4 day periods. Okay. So I know that
strict mortgage protection.
Strict mortgage protection. Okay. And actually I did have some final expenses here and there that I would get, but I didn't have a whole lot of final expense that was out there. Right.
Okay.
But to me, people are people and they all need help. And really it's when you say that you're dialing and you're dialing for 9 hours, explain to me what a dial is in your perception.
One dial is one call. I call people 3 times. Like I call all of my leads 3 times, and then that's 3 dials. If you get what I'm saying.
Are you there, Cindy? She should jump right back on.
Okay.
While we wait for her, just keep that thought in mind. Oh, there she goes. She's coming back.
Hello.
Hey, Cindy, we hear you.
All right. So Sittig is also the queen of not charging her phone. And I didn't realize until it did that. Okay. So you said that you're dialing. And then, so are you saying if you call the phone number one time, you count that as a dial?
Yeah, so I triple dial every lead that I get. So on my lead sheet, that's 3 dials, or that's what I put on my lead sheet.
Stop. Don't do that to yourself anymore. Okay.
Okay.
That's very, okay. So that really will like make you feel like you're having a hard time accomplishing something, because you're not. So 3 calls to the same phone number equals 1 dial. Okay. So I don't want you to feel defeated and like I'll have people call me and I'm making all these calls. And then when I find out they're dialing each number 3 times, right? So they'll be like, oh, I just made 90 dials, but really they didn't. They only called 30 leads. Do you see what I'm saying? So real quick, you start working against yourself and you don't even know it. Okay.
Okay.
So from now on, you call the same number 3 times. That's only equal to 1 dial. Okay. So that's going to help you. And then what times are you calling from? Like, when do you start calling? When do you stop calling? Do you take any breaks? How does that work? What does your schedule look like?
So today I woke up at 7 o'clock and I started dialing at 7:30 and I dialed till 12:30. And then I took a break. I'm grabbing food right now. And then I'm gonna dial again 2 to 9 and try to get in contact with the rest of my leads. Okay.
So here would be my recommendation. I would recommend, I don't know where you are as far as when you're allowed to call or not, right? But I usually don't call before 8 o'clock, only because I don't want to get caught with my hand in the cookie jar, so to speak. Okay. So I usually call from 8 in the morning till 9 o'clock at night. And then I always take my break in the afternoon. And that's typically I would say I typically stop calling probably around like 2 o'clock. Okay. Because 2 o'clock, between 2 and 4 is usually when I take my break. Anywhere between 4:30 and 5 o'clock, I'll get back on the phones again. Okay. And that's just what I found is the most, gives me the best results for my calling. Okay. Sometimes I can call for 2 hours and be done. Sometimes I can call all day and still have to call while I'm in the field. You know what I mean? If you're having trouble, I would say your best recommendation is try to make sure your closest day is booked the most, right? With the understanding, not with the excuse, okay? So be very clear about this, not the excuse, but the understanding that if for some reason you don't get all your appointments booked, that when you're in the field, you're going to do your 2-for-2ing. Do you know what 2-for-2ing is?
Door knocking.
Okay. No, it's not. I mean, it can be, but I wouldn't. Okay. Because it's not as productive with your time. You can definitely schedule door knocks in depending on how many appointments. Like if you have 4 appointments, I would expect that you have figured out what door knocks are around each one of your appointments you're going to and be door knocking before and after. But 2-for-2ing is actually making calls. Okay. So
Okay.
I have an appointment scheduled for say 8:30 in the morning. So right before I pull up to that house, about a mile away, I'm going to pull over, a block away, depending on if you're in the city or the country. I'm going to pull over and I'm going to have my leads right next to me in a binder. And I'm going to make 2 calls. I'm going to call one lead 3 times. I'm going to call a second lead 3 times. Right. So I'm going to make 2 calls. Then I'm going to go to my appointment, run my appointment. As soon as I'm done with my appointment, I'm going to drive a mile away, park the car. I'm going to make 2 calls again. And then I'm going to go to my next appointment. Then right before I get to that appointment, I'm going to make 2 calls. And what that allows you to do is make calls that are more random, on days you don't normally call, at times you might not normally call, right? And that allows you to be the most productive and to add more appointments into your schedule. So now you're trying to add people for that day that you're then in currently, as well as your next day that you're in the field, right? So you're just always trying to be productive. And if you have someone who says, listen, I'm not home on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. Okay. The only day I'm ever home is Saturdays. Then I will preset them for Saturday.
Even if it's like more than 2 days out.
Even if it's more than 2 days out, because if I don't schedule them for Saturday and they can't sit with me Tuesday and Wednesday, and I call them on Friday, guess who's not going to answer the phone?
True.
They aren't going to answer the phone. Right. So I put them on my schedule and then I just show up at the house. I don't call, I don't verify, I just show up at the house. Okay. Not everybody is going to show you. There are people who know, listen, this is the only day of the week I'm freaking available. Right. And they're trying to tell you that. Not all of them are just trying to blow you off. Some of them are, but not all of them are. Right. And I found that after doing this for 16 years, I've been able to read people over the phone and I typically can tell, when I have someone who's, being honest with me and who's not, but I want to give them the benefit of the doubt. And some people just know their schedule and their schedule is tight and they do work 2 jobs and that is the only time to see them. And that's okay. Now you just let them know, okay, I'm going to help you out and this is what I'm going to do for you. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions?
I thought I saw some in the thing, but I can't see that and do this at the same time. I'm not that talented.
I see Jocelyn ask, would you say you write mostly mortgage protection? If so, what is your exact approach or wording from the moment you set the appointment to making the in-home sale?
Okay, so does she mean like my call script, like what I use for a call script?
Is that what you mean, Jocelyn?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Okay. So my phone script is exactly the same every single time. So I obviously always have my leads in front of me. And when they answer, I'm like, Jim, this is Cindy. I'm the field underwriter assigned to you for your mortgage protection. I'm calling about the letter that you got in the mail. You filled out and you sent back for your property at 123 Hickory Street. And usually they're like, oh yeah, okay. I'm like, you have here that you're 36, male and a non-tobacco user, and that your wife is 32, female, also a non-tobacco user. Now, have either of you been tobacco users in the past? And they'll tell me yes or no. If they say yes, I ask them how long ago it is so I know. Then I'm like, okay, any major medical issues for either you or your wife? any strokes, heart attack, cancer, diabetes, COPD, then they'll answer yes or no, or tell me what medical conditions, and I write it down. And then I'm like, okay. And then finally, have either of you had a positive COVID test? And if they say yes, then I ask them when. Okay. And again, it's just so I know what I'm walking into, and it gets them under the understanding that I ask questions and they answer, right? So once they say that, I say, okay, great. Just as that letter stated, everything that we do is non-medical. They don't require any physicals. However, they do require a field underwriter to verify that we're getting the information from the person that requested it. With that said, Jim, they have me scheduled out in your area all day tomorrow and all day Wednesday. Taking a look at you and your wife's schedule, what would be the best day to catch up with the two of you? And then they might say, it definitely not tomorrow, it would definitely have to be Wednesday. Okay, morning, afternoon, or evening. And then they're like, well, it would need to be in the afternoon. Okay, 1 to 2 or 2:30 to 3:30, which of those would work best for the two of you? So then I just kind of get them down to what that time is. And then they say 2:30 to 3:30. I say, okay, great. So Jim, again, my name is Cindy. I'm going to be the one coming to see you. I need you to do me 2 favors though, Jim. First off is give me that window to reach you, because I don't have driving time built into my schedule. And secondly is make sure you let your wife know. I don't want her surprised when some woman shows up at her door. And they usually chuckle at that, or vice versa. If it's the wife, I tell them, make sure, so, tell your husband, so, he doesn't have some, woman just showing up at his door. So, and then when I get to the house, it's very assumptive, like, I'm Cindy, I'm supposed to be coming there. And I just kind of find my way, make my way to the table. And I pretty much tell them where they're going to sit, so that I have control over the situation, right? So for example, so here's my countertop. So I'm sitting here, okay? Here, I would have the wife sit, and across from me, I'd have the husband sit, okay? So I'd never have the husband sitting right next to me. I always want the same sex, the closest to me, okay? And that's just for psychology reasons and everything else. Like, I don't want her, like, I don't know what their relationship is before I walked in the door, right? So, I don't want to assume that everything's fine. I'd much rather just keep everything kosher. And sometimes she'll try to sit at the other end of the table, and I'll say, hey, Miss Mary, come here, sit right next to me. Unfortunately, I have short arms and I can't reach that far for you to see everything. Like, I just make funny stuff up and say, dumb stuff off the top of my head. And I guess they assume that's normal for me. I don't know. But so then, I just make sure that I seat them down, and I take out, I have their lead sheet right in front of me. And then I have, my information sheet where I'm getting all their information, and I just start asking it. So I just look down, and they're sitting there, and I'm like, okay, so, okay, Jim, so you have here, you're 38, and I'll like talk out loud. You're 38. Okay. And approximate height and weight for you, Jim. And then, okay, Mary, height and weight for you. And I literally just follow the form down and start asking them questions, as I'm going through and finding out information from them. Cause I really want to understand what their situation is, right? Cause I really can't help them unless I know what they already have. Plus, to be quite honest, if you don't ask questions like that, right? Like, let's say if you don't ask them what other life insurance they have, and then you get all the way to the end and they're like, oh, no, that's okay. I've got coverage through my workplace. Right. But if I'd asked that question beforehand, when they told me they have coverage through work, I'd be like, because I always ask them, okay, how much life insurance do the two of you have on your own and through the workplace? Like, I separate it, like, specifically for a very psychological reason, I separate it. And then they'll be like, oh, well, I don't have anything on my own, but I have it through the workplace. I'm like, okay, that's great. We always recommend to everybody that get as much as you possibly can through the workplace, just because it's super cheap. Okay. But understand, we don't recommend that being people's only coverage, because Jim, what happens when you leave, retire, become disabled? They're like, yeah, it goes away. Right. So, obviously you're not having that coverage later on, so I use things like that so they understand. I'm like, that's because you don't own that coverage. You participate in a group coverage. So I want to take that ownership away, as far as them feeling like, hey, I've got this all taken care of. I want to take that away. And that's one way of doing that. So now they realize the gap that they have, because they don't own anything on their own. They're not in control of their coverage. Tomorrow, the employer could come back and say, you know what? Budgetary cuts say we're not participating in this anymore. We're not paying for this anymore. Okay. And then anything else that they have that acts like life insurance. I'm like any 401 old 401ks from a prior employer never rolled over, TSPs, CDs. And again, for a lot of people, this has helped me give them an oh crap moment, right? Because now all of a sudden they realized how they're 56 years old and they aren't prepared for life, nonetheless death, right? So when I'm asking these things, I'm truly being concerned, because now I'm thinking, well, if something happens, I'm looking at these incomes. And just so you know, when I ask their incomes, especially if they're retired, right, I make them break down their income for me. So if they make, oh, I make $4,000 and or say I make 6,500 and she makes, 930, right? And I'm like, okay, so you're 6,400. How does that break down? Is that Social Security? Is that pension? Is that military disability? Right? I want to know all those things are, because I want to know when something happens to him, how much money does she still continue to receive? Right? So there's lots of things that differentiate. Like she can only choose the highest of the two, so higher the two Social Securities, right? And then she may or may not get a portion or all of his pension, depending on what options he chose when he retired. And then of course you have the military disability, which a lot of people will say, I have military retirement. And I always differentiate with them. Do you have military retirement like you did 20 years and you retired, or you got out and because of medical, you receive a disability check from the military every single month, right? And that's very important to define, because those are two different types of pays. And typically the disability pay does not follow the spouse unless he were to die of that. So let's say he had, let's just say he had glaucoma in his eyes. Okay. And that's why he gets his disability. If he doesn't die from the glaucoma in his eyes, she's not going to continue to receive that, because the military is reimbursing the member. That's who they own. They don't owe the family anything. They owe the member. Now, if the member dies of that, like it's a heart issue, and then they die of that heart issue, that's typically when the family will then see that disability money. But for a lot of these disabilities, unfortunately, they're put under things that are not gonna cause somebody's death, unfortunately. So, because I want to give them that moment, right? They just did a mortgage, and now they saw in this mortgage, they're looking at their income as, $7,300 every single month. But the reality is he dies. Now she's down to $1,800 a month. They got a $1,200 mortgage. Real quick, you can see that the math is not there, right? So when he tries to tell me he's got all this money, right? You already know. Then he told me he doesn't have this retirement money, doesn't have this other stuff, right? So now I know what the picture is and they can't hide it from me. So now everything they tell me, I'm going to use against them, not in a bad way. I'm going to use it against them to help them, because right now they're in a really bad position, and something happens to him, she's going to be forced out of the house. Okay. It's also important, if you're doing mortgage protection, to know what, like most people think, oh, if I get a mortgage myself and I die, my husband can continue to pay the mortgage payment. But see, the mortgage payment is also it's a contract between me and the bank. If they didn't pull my husband's financials, he can't continue to pay that mortgage when I'm not here anymore. Okay, he's going to have to refinance or pay off the loan. He's got to have those. Now, is that really something that somebody wants or can do or will do? And remember, their income changed, so that she may not even qualify for it on her own based on her debt to income ratio. So there's lots of different factors like that I'm looking at when I'm sitting down and I'm taking people's information, so that I can really understand what their situation is, so I can really best make sure that I'm helping them. I just sat down with the husband and wife and found out that their insurances were not what they thought they were, and I replaced both of them. The lady specifically asked for whole life and instead was giving universal life policies. And universal life is, if it had to go in one of the two buckets, unfortunately it goes in the term bucket. Okay. And so she didn't realize what was going to happen with that policy. So in turn, we switched her universal life policies to whole life policies, because that's what she wanted. That's what she asked for. And she talked to 3 different companies before ever talking to me. And every quote she said, I had her read every single one, and every single one was a universal life policy, even though she had blatantly, clearly asked for a whole life policy. But that agent must have been afraid to ask for the premiums. So they literally in his case, almost his premiums are like 1.5 times more than what they were before. But she was okay with that because she knew what she was getting. You know what I mean? So you can't be afraid of, telling the truth. There's so many people who are worried about beating a quote. I wasn't. I knew what she wanted. And I say, well, you can do this. However, this is the things you're going to run up against, or we can do what you want. Yes, it's a little more now, but you're not paying $600 or $700 later when your cost of insurance is through the roof and they've eaten up all your cash value. And she was like, okay, yeah, no, this is definitely what I'll pay a couple dollars more now to have it locked in, that my premium isn't going to change and my coverage isn't going to change. So again, learning people's situations. I mean, that house went from, I was sending pictures, and you can ask Kyrie, I was sending pictures of abandoned houses when I was driving there. I'm like, where am I going to? You might need to come find me. So make sure you're tracking me. Okay. And I walked out with over $7,000 in annual premium out of that house. But it was all because we protected the mortgage for each of them. Then we turned around and we switched over their life insurance to make sure they had what they both wanted and needed. So don't, you just can't assume. You just don't know, So what other questions were in there? I thought I saw another one, but I can't.
Thank you, Cindy. I'm glad you touched on that, because I saw that you posted that you not wrote over, but it was an IUL in place for someone, and then you converted over. So would you say that you're against those IULs because they do increase over time?
Well, the one I was looking at was a UL. So here's the thing. So no insurance product is bad as long as you're using it for the right reasons. An insurance product is bad if you're using it for the wrong reason, right? Okay, so for those that don't know it, I'll give you a quick snapshot. So a UL policy. So there's a difference between your premiums you paid and your cost of insurance. Your premiums is how much money you send to the insurance company every single month. Your cost of insurance is how much it actually costs to have for your age. Okay. So when you have your monthly premiums, at some point, let's say this person's spending, their premiums are $100 a month. Okay. At some point, their cost of insurance, because they're never going to get younger, right? Their cost of insurance at some point is going to be $150 a month. Now, they don't call that person and say, hey, now you need to now start sending us $150 a month. They take that extra $50 out of their cash value every single month to supplement the premiums. Well, next year they get a year older. So now their premiums, their cost of insurance is $175, but they're still only sending $100. So now they have $75 every single month coming out of that bucket until there's no more bucket left to supplement it. And now they either have to pay, I've seen as much as $1,100 a month. You either have to pay that every single month, or you lose your life insurance. And guess what? There's no cash value to walk away with, because they already spent through all of that to supplement your premiums. Okay. So the problem with illustrations, when you do universal life illustrations, is that illustration, if you do one on me right now at 42 years old, that illustration is showing that if I stay 42 years old for the rest of my life and my cost of insurance never changes, those numbers they showed will work out. The problem with that is I'm never going to stay 42 years old, but they also don't know what those cost of insurance changes are going to be over the years. Right. So it's really the old bait and switch that there's a lot of insurance companies to this day, unfortunately, even though there's been multi-billion-dollar cases against them, right, about telling people they're selling them whole life when they're really selling them a universal life policy. So I'm all for it if it's for the right reasons. I tell people, listen, there's people I sell this to that are very young, but I'm going to tell them when to jump ship, right? There's a time before their money, before it flips over, that they build that money, they had the protection, it was less expensive than whole life, but gave them some cash value to walk away with. I tell them when to jump ship. Okay. So again, if it's used for the right reason, then it's fine. But when someone's 60, this guy's now 72 years old. Who sets a universal life on someone at 71 years old when their cost of insurance is at the highest it's ever been in their life and is only going to keep getting higher? That doesn't make any sense to me,
Okay, so I have one more question here before. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
One more question before I read the issue paid report. So Julian asked, are you getting most of your leads from the CRM or different vendors?
Well, most of my leads are really from locked out counties. because I've, been doing this for so long. So my counties are locked out. So any lead, it's like a BPL, any lead that comes into those counties automatically comes to me. I have bought leads though out of the CRM for Virginia because I don't have any counties locked out in Virginia. And I had people come down here and I was training them and I was still writing $10,000 a week or more on those leads here with people. So, and I was finding a lot of annuity money as well in that circumstance. So, you just have to know that it's like anything else, right? If the lead is less expensive, then you just know that you're going to have to make more calls. You either have time or money, right? And in the beginning, we have more time, we have less money. So that means we just have to buy more leads and just know we're going to have to work harder for those leads. But we do that with the understanding that by doing that, we put ourselves in a financial position that we then can buy the leads that cost more because now we have more money and we can use our time more wisely, if that makes sense.
Yes, definitely. All right. Thank you so much, Cindy. You provided so much information. Oh my goodness. I'm excited for more people to watch this video. I'll post this video later on today before 5. I'll post it on YouTube and on the group me. And another thing on FFL Humble Beginnings under the agent page, there is a lead guide where it explains those mailers that you're talking about and other types of as well, different lead vendors. So make sure you check that out. I'm gonna go over the IP report, the issue paid report from October 29th to November 11th. Remember, this is 1 week worth of pay, okay? Direct deposit into their bank account. I see we have 28 writing agents that week that we wrote a total of $90,038. And I'll start with number 1. It's Kyrie Joyner at the top. He made $15,000. Now, remember, Kyrie is 29 years old. He has 3 children underneath the age of 5 years old, and this man is making $15,000 a week. So this is something anyone can do. Number 2, Cynthia Sittig, $10,961. Danny Maltese, $10,639. And I believe that's his first week too. He just got those writing numbers. And so great job, Danny. Tanner A, $6,451. Justin B, $6,056. Corey W, $5,368. Sanja N, $3,600. Asa P, $3,600. Keisha B, $3,414. Jerry T, $2,612. Kelvin R, $2,144. Grant B, $2,039. Jeria B, $1,978. Malcolm H, $1,823. Jeffrey B, $1,775. Dustin S, $1,710. Carrie W, $1,656. Douglas C, $1,574. Miles C, $1,344. Terry B, $1,332. Jessica S, $1,172. Andre C, $822. Gregory B, $801. Mo T, $541. Elsa C, $472. Abdul K, $457. Charles W, $414. And Adam L, $274. Great job, y'all. This next week, let's try to hit at least, we did 90,000. Let's try to at least get to 125,000. We want to make sure we're protecting more families, putting more insurance in place. I know we can do it. So that's it for the call today. Ed, Cindy, you want to leave anything else?
No, I just want to, everybody, reach out and just remember, more than most people that you sit down with. Okay. Just try to understand where they're coming from, like understand their picture. And by doing that, it'll automatically tell you what you need to go over with them and what they get and what they don't get. And guess what, guys? Sometimes you're going to sit down with someone, it doesn't matter. I sat down with someone, he had no life insurance on his own. just bought this house. His wife is not gonna have enough money to be able to pay the mortgage when he dies based off his income because she doesn't get his pension. Her social security is a little bit higher, so she's not getting his social security, right? And I call them CFSs, can't fix stupid, right? And literally when I was sitting in the house, I just put CFS, like as much as I wanted to be able to help him, he didn't want to be helped, right? And so I just leave those people with, what I mean? If you ever have any questions, let me know. But, have a happy holiday and take care. I mean, sometimes you're going to have those and they're frustrating because it just doesn't make any sense. But remember the next family then that you sit down with, because the next family I sat down with was the one that I sat down with, and I literally helped them and wrote $7,000 of annual premium, with that one family, just by caring. And I did nothing different in the second house as I did in the first house. Just some people are people, so it's all part of your numbers. Don't get discouraged by them because it happens and it's all right. Now, the next family is the one you can actually sit down and help.
All right. Thank you, Cindy, for that ending note. Have a great dial day, guys. Have a great week. Bye.
Bye, guys.